That's so exciting.
This is funny.
So I know a lot of you know these women, but I'm just going to have them say a quick little something about themselves, introduce themselves so you know their kids and their ages and why we selected them and think that they're awesome and experienced. So, Jessica.
Okay. Do we have pictures? Okay. Shall I wait? Okay, so there I am. Okay, I'm Jessica. Looks strikingly like the child to my over there on the right, which I love hearing more and more these days. People say, I thought it was you, it was your daughter. I thought it was your daughter, it was you. So that's me, my husband Luke. We've been married for 16 and a half years. We met when we were 17 and 18, so I just kind of barely remember life not being with him. And then our daughter Kaylee on the right is 13, and then Grayson is like 10 and 11 twelfths. He'll be 11 next month. And Quinn, little guy in the middle, is 8 and a half. So those are my people.
Chrissy.
Hi, good morning. I'm Chrissy Wolf. That's my crew. And when I sent this picture to Nancy, I said, this is a perfect example of when there's high winds on the beach that you should cancel your photo shoot. My hair looked beautiful. I'm like, that's ridiculous. But there was a million people on my husband's side of the family, so I wasn't the one that planned it. So that's what we got. So Joey is first there in the white. He's 13. And then Catherine, she's 8. Then that's me, my husband, Mike. And we've been married, it'll be 20 years this year. We were high school sweethearts. And then my son, Michael, he's 15. And that's our group.
And Miriam?
Hi, I'm Miriam. And this was actually our Christmas picture this year after multiple trials. This is what we came up with. Didn't get sent out to anyone, though. We didn't have time for Christmas cards. But so that's my husband, PJ, and we'll be married 20 years also this year. And my son, Max, is on the left. He's 12. My daughter, Sarah, in the middle is 9. And my son, Paulie, on the right is 10.
And Lori?
And my name is Lori Foster, and that's my family. I've been married to Brett for 17 years, and we have 4 kids. And on the left is Noelle, and she is 10, and then Judah's on my lap, and he's 6, and then Piper, she has all of her hair in this picture right now. She's cut most of it off as of 2 days ago, and for fun, because that's what 4-year-olds do. And then Lainey is on the right, and she's 12.
Okay, awesome. So we're just going to jump into it so we can try and get to as many questions as possible. So the first question is, how do you know when your family is complete? What if you and your spouse have differing thoughts?
Okay. I'll go ahead and take that one first. So my husband was one of 4 kids. I was one of 2. We said, how about 3? And so we had kind of always said that. Then we had 1 child. We had 2 children. And he said, I could be done there. And I said, no, wait, we always said 3. And so I just waited that out. It wasn't the timing I would have been like strongly lobbying yet for a 3rd child. So I just waited that one out. And for us, like, he just came on board. He had a whole bunch of things happen in 1 week where people were talking about just the significance of being parents and just how much impact you can have just in parenting. And a couple things happened. We went away on a getaway weekend, and his massage therapist, like one of the only times we ever got a couple's massage, and he got a massage, and he was like, the lady talked about her kids the whole time. And then we went out to dinner, and he said, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I want a 3rd kid. And I said, yes. So we still waited for a little bit longer till that spacing was as hoped, but so that's how we landed on 3, and so we had some harmony about it, but after he got on board.
Okay.
For us, we had our 2 boys were 5 and 7, and my husband was definitely done, and I didn't think I was, but everywhere we went, he would tell people, yeah, we're done. He's like, everybody in this house, they wipe their own butt, and if they don't get it good, they'll get it in the shower. He was like, it's just done. So I was feeling like we weren't, but I had a health concern, and I had an x-ray, and then they said, we want you to wait 3 months, and then you're going to have a CAT scan with dye. And at that point, I was 37. I was kind of like, okay, this is it. It's done. And I was sad about it. And one day I was talking to a friend of mine, my best friend, and she was pregnant at the time with her third. She had 2 boys as well. She was just having a really rough day, struggling with the boys, not getting along, just exhausted. And we were talking on the phone. I think I was just emptying the dishwasher, and she was like, "So what do you think I'm going to have?" And I was like, "Well, probably a boy, because everybody we know has boys. I mean, you've got boys, I've got boys." And then there was just dead silence on the other end. And I was like, "Oh, I think I delivered the wrong news." Obviously, Jordan doesn't realize that I can really determine the sex of babies these days. But really what happened is that she just needed to hear me say, you know, whatever you're going to have, it's going to be the perfect addition to your family. That's what she needed to hear, but I didn't deliver that news. So later that day, I was praying, and I was just like, "God, you are the God of surprises." I was like, if you could surprise her with a baby girl, that would be awesome. And I was like, and if you could you throw one in for me? And then I was like, oh my gosh, why did I have that? Like, I can't pray like that. Like, I cannot get pregnant. And sure enough, a month later, I was pregnant with my daughter, Catherine. And but then I had to deliver the news to my husband, who was officially done. And so I went to him, and I was like, guess what? I was like, I'm pregnant. And he was like, I was going to buy a boat. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening. And I'll be honest, I mean, sometimes you're just not on the same page. And it took him a little while to be comfortable with us being a little bit older and starting all over again. Because I was like, well, no boat, but we do need a car seat. But I have to say that she's now 8, and the 2 of them couldn't be closer. It's the greatest blessing. But sometimes it's just not in our control, and sometimes we're not on the same page. But he has a plan. So.
Yeah, I think as we were talking about this at our meeting beforehand, we found that more often than not, you and your spouse aren't on the same page necessarily. For PJ and I, when we had 2 kids, he thought that was fine. He was very comfortable with 2. He was getting ready to start a new business, and I wanted to have a third, but my first 2 were with fertility help. So I kind of figured that God was either going to change my heart or change my husband's heart, and it was going to work out. And as it turned out, God surprised us. I got pregnant unexpectedly and was very nervous about telling my husband because I knew that wasn't what he necessarily had in mind. But I needed him to know, because I was like, someone else has to have this news. So I basically poked him in the arm one morning after I took the test. I was like, I'm pregnant. So there was no like, oh, honey, I have some news. It was like, I'm pregnant. And he then had an eye twitch for the next 6 months. He was a little bit stressed out by that. But of course, it was God's timing. It wasn't my timing. It wasn't my husband's timing, but it was God's timing. And it all works to the good. So.
And the eye twitch went away.
And the eye twitch eventually went away
Yeah.
before she was born.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a great
I know,
story.
it's
I love
great.
that. Eye twitch. So for us, so what I would share would be something a little bit different. Is so I also had some fertility treatments when we were trying to have children, and I also had some miscarriages, and that really brought a lot of fear and anxiety into my heart. So what I would say to answer the question of when do you know if you're done, what I would say is you can't say not you can't say, I don't want to offend anyone, this is my story. I had to say I can't decide to not have children because I'm afraid. So fear can't be the decision maker. I think having an informed, there's a lot of things that can cause fear in your life, like money issues or housing issues or miscarriage or perhaps even you might have a child with special needs and you are worried that genetics, like there might be something, those are all totally valid things, and I think you can make the decision to not have children based on those things. But if you're making that decision because you are afraid, I wouldn't encourage that. I would say fear isn't how you choose to not have kids. That would be my take on that.
Okay, awesome.
So we had 2 more after. After I said, I'm too afraid, then we said, that's not a good choice. And then we had 2 more.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, how do you recommend talking to a friend if you have concerns about their child? Do you say something?
I'll start.
So concerns about, so if you're feeling like your friend, there's something, you have concern about their child, do you say something? And if you do say something, how do you say it? So, because
Yeah, I think as we've thought about this and processed it, it's obviously a really sensitive issue, and to even think about talking about it, like you're really treading on fragile ground to do that. So I just think, first of all, you wouldn't want to ever do that flippantly or without thinking. I think sometimes, people may notice things and just say it, and that would be bad. I think if something's gnawing at you over a long period of time and you've really seen things that truly concern you and you realize that your heart motivation is just for what is best for that child, and you feel like it would really help that child tremendously if they were getting different care or services, then I think to come up with a very gentle and loving way to talk to that mom would be great. And I would even suggest bringing another friend in on that to say, like, here's what I'm thinking, in a private way, but, could you help me figure out what to say? I think in another realm, sometimes you might have concerns about someone's child, but the mom shares that concern. So, like, I have a friend who had said years ago that she was concerned about her son's speech and stuff, and just hearing that, and I think you can take your own story and background and use that. I remember saying, I was a child development person, and I just remember, there are all sorts of, evaluation tools, and, there's all sorts of services, and if you're concerned about it, you may want to just get them evaluated. There's no harm in that, and just kind of help by walking alongside of friends in that time in a way that engages them on what they're even talking about. I had one other thought about that. So I think pretty much I would just say, sometimes you may be an expert on something because God's put it in your life in a hard way, because you've walked the road. And so I would say to use that story courageously. Like, for me, like my son had an eye turn and ended up having surgery and stuff. And so if I can use that for good and help someone else that is going through that, then I think take what God's given you, even in the hard times, and use it for good. But just to tread very carefully on those waters, but to check your motivation, and if it really is out of deep concern and love, to maybe even bring someone else in to carefully figure out how you might be able to address it, just because you want what's best.
This is a question I think we could talk about in a lot of different ways, because we could think about it in terms of like seeing a friend with whose child we might wonder about, like a developmental concern or like a behavioral concern or even a safety concern, as we're, have older kids and kids that are, getting into things like bullying or driving safety, or there's kind of a lot of different areas about it. When I was thinking about the answer to the question, just to kind of reiterate something that Jess said, was, kind of approaching it in a gentle and prayerful way, and even just considering, like, kind of opening up a dialogue about it, saying to your friend, hey, yeah, I just wanted to touch base with you about Johnny, how's he doing? And even give that mom a chance to see if she has any concerns. This morning, scripture kind of came to me thinking about being quick to listen and slow to speak, and the verse says slow to become angry, but I was thinking about like slow to judge. Like, we might have a perspective or interpretation, but we might not know if that's right. But if we're kind of approaching it in love and kind of opening the dialogue, it might allow us to be a blessing to them and, direct them. Maybe this is something your doctor would want to know about or your pediatrician would want to know about, but not necessarily saying, oh, you should go to the pediatrician and talk about this, but saying, hey, maybe this is something that, the pediatrician might want to know about or might have even more answers for you about. Just to help be a support, but not direct like a fear, I guess, was some of the things I was thinking about in answering that. Anybody else?
Yeah,
have
I would
anything to add?
just add, when I had a daughter, I have a daughter who, Piper, yeah, she's still there. She's the one who cut her hair. She was 9 months old, and she wasn't standing or putting any weight on her legs, and so she did get evaluated, and no one said anything to me about it. It was the pediatrician who did. But I will say that people like to speak into it after she had physical therapy for her. She has low tone, which really doesn't mean anything other than she's super flexible, basically, for her right now. but it could, like there are some things that are connected to low tone, and everybody liked to tell me what they were. So I would just add that if you're not an expert, I would not hypothesize on what the future could be with one small piece of information. That's all I would add.
Okay, awesome. Anything else? No? Feel good? Okay, awesome. Do you have any tips or words of encouragement to moms with husbands that travel for work?
Okay, I can speak about this one. So my husband does not travel, but he works in the mushroom industry, and mushrooms grow all the time. So he works weekends and holidays, and it goes on and on. And so it can be really frustrating. But one thing that I noticed was that I'd be with a lot of moms whose husbands do work a lot or travel a lot, and they would be complaining in front of their kids, to other moms about like their husband's gone again and he's not going to be home, and that is all so stressful. But I actually had a friend like help me with this, and she said, you have the responsibility of setting the tone in your home. So if you can teach your kids about what your husband is doing for your family. I mean, he's out there every morning. He leaves the house before 6. He is working hard to support us, to allow me to work part-time and to stay home, and all the things that our kids get to do. So as often as I possibly can, I try to point that out to my kids. And then you have good friends that you can complain to on the side every once in a while. No, but I mean, it's valid. It is definitely valid. But I mean, at the same time, just trying to give thanks for what they do and how they support your family, and just kind of feeding your kids in that way, I just think is important.
Yeah.
I'll also jump in on this one. I used to say to myself a lot, and I mean, it's still an issue, but it's, changed its shape over time. But when the kids were really little, I would say to myself, he wants to be home as much as you want him to be home. And I would tell myself that, and he would say that too. He'd say, believe me, I want to be there as much as you want to have me there. I do think as a side issue that some people, moms or dads, like I've seen people use work as an avoidant behavior to being home, so I do want to acknowledge that sometimes there's an actual issue there, but that's another topic. So let's just assume that dad wants to be home. So I would just remind myself of that. I would also just try to put myself in his shoes, thinking about the stress of his day, asking him about that, and then, but also sharing what the stresses of mine were. And I remember thinking in those days, our days look so different. And I would say, do you know that there's like 3 days that I have in every one of yours? Because that's the way it felt. And so I would but saying that, because I also remember thinking, the really stressful days that he has at work tended to then be what created a very stressful day for me. So I think just being empathetic and trying to put yourself in the other one's shoes, but letting your husband know what those challenges are for you too, so you can just share those together. I also think to know your own bent, to know how to set yourself up for success is great. So like when my husband would travel, because inevitably, husband doesn't travel right before you have a baby because you don't want to miss the birth. But then guess what? When you have the baby and everyone leaves, then he travels all the time. And you're like, oh my gosh. So I would just set myself up as best as I could. For me and my bent, that meant put a play date every single day of the week, get to Bible study, ask people if they have dinner plans. If he was traveling with another person from work who was a mom, I'd be like, you want to have dinner? So I would but I know that's my personality. So I needed to put all sorts of play dates in the schedule because that's what I needed to survive. And going to the Y, because there's free babysitting there.
Yes.
Go to Bible study, always, every week. I was like, yeah. So those are some things. We also learned to email. So when I'd say, can you just send a shot across the bow to me to let me know? Because when you get the phone call from the work number when it's really late and you're like, I don't want to, it's hard to pick up the phone and be really kind. And so we've learned to email. I just say, just send me an email and let me know how things are going as the day approaches its end so I can process that. So that was very helpful for us. And then one last quick thing is just for what to do in that time when kids were littler, just throw music on. I did that actually even yesterday. It was I actually sent my husband a text that you could look at that said, DEFCON 2. don't know what to do. Do you have any time? And he was like, how can I help? I'm like, FaceTime? I mean, so he called in on a FaceTime fatherly call yesterday because he wasn't home yet. But so I put on music. I think when they were really little, like if you've just been downstairs all day, like just go upstairs. Something simple, like you don't have to get a whole bunch of stuff out, but if you're upstairs, go downstairs. You know, take a walk, put music on, tie cloth diapers or hand towels around their feet and let them ice skate around on hardwood floors. Like, I don't know, but like just giving them something to do, fill a sink with soap and give them measuring cups. Like stuff that doesn't involve extra like total work and clean up on your part, but just to give you some little things that you can do. Or bubble baths. Let's go swimming. Put you all in the bath for a long, long time. They're prunes when they come out. So anyway, those are just a few ideas, but that's a really challenging issue, and I think it's just super hard.
Where were you when I had kids?
I was looking for play dates too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome and super encouraging. I know this time of year is not super easy because you can't go outside and play too most of the time. So it's nice to have some ideas and doing something until the men get home. Anything else that you guys want to add onto that? Feel good? Okay. So speaking of husbands, how do you prioritize your marriage as your kids get older and involved in so many activities?
I'll start with that one. So one thing that works for Brett and I, and we have a wide variety of ages, so from 4 to 12, but we like to take the first 15 minutes of our time together when he comes home from work to just be by ourselves. So we actually go into our bedroom. We have 2 chairs in our bedroom, and we just sit there, and we have 15 minutes, and we just tell the kids that they're not allowed to come in, that it's mommy and daddy time, and we feel like this sets a good example for them that our marriage is first, that they are actually not first, and that, you know, it's important that we work on our marriage, and we talk to them about it. I mean, this is definitely language that we use with them. Like, we just need to spend some time together. And it's just 15 minutes, but we do it every day. If you have really small children, you might not be able to physically leave them and go to another room. So, I mean, you could go to an adjacent room or set them up with some crafts or something that they could do kind of independently, but you're nearby. But we really have found it to be valuable, and we think it really helps us connect even more so later on, like when the bedroom doors close and they stay closed, you know, which is another question we'll get to later.
Right. Anybody else want to take this?
Yeah.
Okay, go for
it. This question, I think, I have a little scattered thoughts here, but I think, like Lori said, just even verbally telling your kids how important marriage is, like, you know, it's funny how, like, I remember hearing this in a talk, but like if parents hug, you'd be so surprised how fast little torpedoes come like running across the room and come right up in between you. And it's totally true. But like, so I think just like showing that physical affection and being affectionate in front of them, like hugging, and then they just want to get in on it. But I think that's important to tell them how important marriage is. So we just blatantly tell them, like, hey, it's so important that we love on each other first so we can love you better. We do try to do like 2 getaways a year, like, not like, I mean, just like driving ones. And I think, and sometimes we've done that on a really fun way to like surprise each other. One of us plan the weekend, the other one doesn't know anything, and then like give a secret packet of the itinerary. So we've done that a lot, but also, now that kids are older, we can have lunch dates. I love lunch dates. It feels like stolen time, and it's just like my favorite thing. I think serving together versus maybe...
So we tell us that we're going to get there. Lunch dates will happen one day, right? Like all these kids will grow up.
Thank God for the 4-minute commute that allows lunch to happen.
Nice.
But I think to serve together has been something we've tried to do, and the craziness of what is this phase is like... you know, find a team or something that you both have a passion about and try to stick to that together. And then even in the evenings, I think to function as a unit as much as possible is really important. Like, you know, with kids, like last night, I mean, all examples I could give you from the last 24 hours. But like I was sitting there trying to go over these questions and asking like intimacy questions, and I was like trying to talk quietly because it's 10:30 and there's still a child sitting up over there doing homework. And I'm like, she needs to go to bed, you know. But this is like, but this phase, like we have lost all evening because there's homework and activities. So, but I think functioning together, like do dishes, whatever, people are going to bed, and stay together. Say, what are we going to do this evening? Like, even if it's watch a show together or read together or something, and go to bed at the same time. I would just say that. Like, don't, like, just be separate entities in the evening. I would just try to do that. And, like, one thing we do sometimes is just choose a book to read together, which just means he reads out loud and I fall asleep. But if I sit up, I can hang for a little while longer. But I think just choosing things that you can do together in an evening such that you're not just running parallel lives.
Okay, good. Feel good? Okay, awesome. So kind of going off of that, how do you keep intimacy a priority as the kids get older and are more aware of what parents do in the bedroom?
I can start
Go
on
for
that
it.
one again. Okay, this one I had to write notes for because I didn't want to mess it up.
That's awesome.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, so I had once heard this talk, and this guy, he's giving the talk, and he says, you know, a guy could get fired and be in a car accident and have a terrible day and come home and still want to have sex. And you know, for a woman, it's just not that way. I mean, we're exhausted, and it's not necessarily something on the top of our list if we're having a really emotional day. So the guy likened it, and he said, you know, for a man, it's just something that he needs, and it's not necessarily based on his emotions, although it can be. But for a woman, it's very emotional. So imagine if you needing to talk as a woman, most women do need to talk to connect. He said, imagine if the husband came home from work and you wanted to talk, and he said, I have a headache tonight, I just can't talk. And it really affected me. It made me think, okay, like, I need to talk, and what if he just said, I can't do it at all? And I've said those very same things when Brett says, okay, I'd like to, and I say, I can't. And so it made me think that I need to look at Brett's needs differently than just how that I'm tired, or I have a headache, or I've been playing with children all day, but really just think about it as something that he needs, and he's not trying to burden me. It's not a problem. Like, we should be enjoying this together. So one thing I would say is, for us, we try to kiss every day, and like, not just a quick kiss on the cheek. Like, it's really helpful. I mean, it connects us intimately, because you can't kiss and not connect, really. So I would encourage everyone to try to kiss. You find that we have found that the more, if we are having a kiss every day, we want to, touch. We want to sit closer to each other on the sofa. We want to hold hands when we're walking down the street. So it's really impactful, so that helps. And the other thing is that sometimes I just have to tell myself, tonight we are going to be physical, and it may not be something on my list. I have a busy day, I know I'm going to be tired, but if I can plan for it, then it may be unromantic, but I need to sometimes get my brain into that, and know that it's important for our marriage.
That's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It wasn't my suggestion, but who brought up the commitment underwear?
Oh, that was Miriam, wasn't it?
It was Bonnie Kotler had done a talk, and somebody else
I thought
brought
that
it
was a
up.
great
Yeah.
idea. Somebody suggested that. I thought that was great.
Yeah,
But,
that's awesome.
oh gosh, what was I going to say? Was the question about how do you keep intimacy, or
Yes,
was it about
kind of like
kids?
as the kids get older, and
As
so
the kids
they're-
get older.
Yeah, they might know what's going on.
Okay,
so
all right.
like any
Because
tips or
yeah. My boys are 15 and 13, and so it becomes a little bit harder to. I mean, they're up, like Jessica said, till 11 o'clock at night. And I used to get really tense about, like, oh gosh, do they know what's going on in the bedroom? And I think I did a study here, and we talked, Kevin Lehman brought it up, and how important it is that intimacy needs to be respected, and that kids need to know that it's an important part of marriage, that it shouldn't be, necessarily shameful, but just respected. And so, I mean, certainly, boundaries with closed doors and things like that are obvious. But it helped me to relax a little bit about that, and just realizing how important it is to the marriage. So that's that's one of the things. The other thing is I had read, just when this question came up, I had read an article, and I wish that right after I had my children that somebody had shared this with me, and the article was talking about how men are just enthralled by the female body. And as we want affection, they want to be desired. And so a lot of times for us, if we've just had a baby, like maybe we're a little bit self-conscious and we just want to get back to our weight the way it was before. And so maybe being intimate, we're just not completely comfortable with that. And the men, our husbands don't really care. They just want to be with us. So I mean, just letting yourself off the hook and realizing what they are, they just want to be desired and they want to be with you. And we're thinking, next month when I'm exercising more and I'm feeling better about myself, then we'll do that, So I kind of wish that someone had spoke that advice to me then, because I can just remember feeling that way.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about kind of like a tie-in to the last question and to this question. In one of our small groups, and I would encourage you guys to be in a couple small group or a neighborhood group, we used to organize these date nights where two of the couples would watch all the kids, and then all the other couples could go out and do whatever. They could go out to dinner, they could go to a movie, or they could not go out and they could just stay at home without the kids there. And I thought that was a good way for our group to support marriages, for the kids to see that support of the marriages, and for also to like notch out that like time for intimacy.
Yeah.
So I just was thinking, I need to encourage you guys to think about that and consider the resources that are sitting right next to you. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on this one too. I think to piggyback off of what Chrissy said in talking about women's insecurities, about like when you just had kids and you're just like, this isn't the body, all those things that we struggle with. And as I was thinking about this and as I've talked to my husband over the years, like just having the confidence and just feeling secure in who you are is just so appealing to your husband, to just be comfortable in your own skin and to just be willing to share yourself and to be confident about that is just such a gift, and something that, I said, I was like, did you really notice? I mean, like this, talking about, body changes over the years. He's like, no, I really didn't. They really don't, and it's such a gift, and they just don't, see it. And, but just that, and that they just desire to be wanted. I remember reading Brene Brown's Daring Greatly last year, and she has a little section in there about men and women's view of sex, and pretty much just so many of the guys were saying too, like, am I enough for her? Like, guys have insecurities too, and to just be, they may feel a bit insecure as well, but just to offer yourself up and share that together is just so important. I said to my husband when I was asking these questions, I said, how do you keep it a priority? And he said, tell them to get a good lock on their door. Because we didn't have a good lock on the door for a while, but we've got a good one now. So the other thing I would say is communicating your hopes and expectations and attempt. You know how it's like, even in your relationship in general, like maybe one of you is like a little more on board and excited and close to the other one. Like, and I just kind of picture like radio frequencies and tuning it. So like one of us might send off a signal, during the day in an email or a text or something like that to communicate expectations or hopes. And I would like to also dovetail off of what Lori said in, talking about men's desire a lot of the time, but there's also relationships where that's flip-flopped, and, women actually would be the one that have a greater desire, and that men, process their stress in a different way. And so I think we can all accept that there's not necessarily going to always be a perfect balance in desire for intimacy in marriage. And sometimes that's going to be that the wife is looking for more intimacy, and sometimes that's going to be that the husband is. But I think communicating about that, and even just looking on the calendar, like, has a week passed? Like just making just as simple as that. Like, oh yes, that's been too many days. And like Lori said, just like know it's important, commit, and make it happen.
One of my girlfriends talked about how her and her husband, one was a microwave and one was a slow cooker, in terms of their desire for, and you remember?
Well, so
we talked about that.
Okay, I did. She's trying to say, Jessica, do you want to say this? Okay. Well, here's the deal. So I heard this before we got married that men are like microwaves and women are like crock pots. And we've just come to the conclusion that we're both toaster ovens, and which is kind of helpful for us because he's not a microwave and I'm not a crock pot. And so it's just figuring out how you tune your frequencies and just communicating about it. Like, we have talked about this a lot at our house, and just trying to figure out how to acknowledge the issues that you have, being open about it, whether you're feeling slighted or you're, just whatever it is, just communicate about it and to make it a priority.
I didn't say your name, but you.
I know.
She picked up on
You just
that well.
stared a hole through,
That's awesome. All right, switching gears a little bit. I know Jessica's super excited to answer this question. Just kind of, how do you encourage the siblings to get along, your kids to get along
I was like, where are we?
with each other? What kind of tips and?
I just have to say, for the love, I really struggle with this. So we have one more question down the line that you'll hear more from me in this area. But wow, encouraging kids to get along. This is where I sent the DEFCON 2 text yesterday, was because there were teeth in a 10-year-old's leg and punching and slamming against a wall. It just breaks my heart. But so just trying to figure out how to deal with that. And as they've aged and things are bigger and harder and literally. But when they were little, we still had issues. And I, at one point, got to the point where I developed the kindness prize on a daily basis because I was so tired of people being mean. And so I said, who's going to win the kindness prize today? And so I had dollar store junk, and then I would let the winner pull out a prize. And so I would just highlight, things that were kind and the ways to serve each other. Right now, I give out push-ups like it's my job and like they're going out of style. So if people are not kind, they do push-ups. I'm like, drop and give me 10. And my boys are so ripped and cut right now. And then Grandpa says, you doing a lot of push-ups these days? And they're like, yeah. So I think reminding them, and this is because I struggle with this. I'm coming from I just want to know what everyone else thinks for this answer. But reminding them how important it is to love and serve each other even when we don't feel like it. And I do remind them of that. I mean, we've tried forced hugs. We've tried recently my husband tried to say trying to get them to say something they're thankful for, in the midst of these situations. So I just really want to hear what everyone else has to say.
Oh, I can speak to that. Don't judge me if you don't like what I'm going to say. So Judah and Piper, they're 4 and 6. They're about 19 months apart, and I think Judah resents the fact that Piper's alive. It's just she took his spot as the youngest child. I don't know. So they have a hard time getting along. And Piper's not super innocent either. I mean, she can push his buttons. But I will say, Judah, who is 6, he likes to play with neighbors. He's the only boy in our family, and so he needs some testosterone outside of our house. And he is really mean to Piper a lot. And so what I say is, we kind of have a family motto. We have a 3-part one, but one of the parts is that we love our neighbors as ourselves. And our closest neighbor is our family. So our sisters, our brother, and the mom and dad. If we can't love each other well, then how can we love the people outside of our house? So we say fosters stick together. That's what do fosters do? They stick together. What do sisters do? They stick together. And if Judah is unkind to her, I basically say, until you can be kind to her, you can't go out and play and be kind to other people. You have to exercise that in the house first. And then I will give him some time he has to come up with 3 things that are nice about her. So he'll have to affirm good qualities in her. And it's not easy for him. He's like, you're awesome. You're good. And then he looks at me, he's like, oh. So it's hard. I mean, he's 6. He doesn't have a lot of adjectives, right now. But anyway, it helps. I make him think about the things that are good that are good about her. There's a lot of really wonderful things about her. And it's great because it makes me think about the wonderful things about her too. So I think it's great all around. And it does work. So he can really turn that behavior of, he gets angry a lot. And so for him to stop and to say what's nice about her, and then realize he has to be kind so he can go out and play with friends. It works for us. We're still in the trial stage, so I'll let you know how it affects him in 5 years, but
Love that.
it's working now.
That's good.
It's funny, when we were talking about this last week, I was like, oh, it doesn't seem that bad lately. Wouldn't you know? The next week, I'm like, oh, the sibling rivalry. Remember I said that? I was like, oh, it's not that bad right now. Well, several years ago, it was bad, and Carol Ann did let me borrow a book, Siblings Without Rivalry, which was a very good book, and I think one of the good points in the book is emphasizing speaking positive. So, like, say when, Max is hitting Polly or something, I try to say, hey, I know you would know a better way to handle this, and not, and encouraging, him to take on a positive role and not pressing him into that he's doing the wrong thing, that I'm condemning him. I also, from this book, we try not to compare. Can't you be like Polly, or can't you be like Sarah? We try not to do that. We try to just give them ownership for their choices and encourage them to do the right thing. Sometimes we have conversations. Sometimes it's not right in the midst of it. Sometimes it's a little bit later. Let's think about how we could have done that differently and try to give them a chance to speak to, I should have come to you and asked for help. I should have gone to my room and just ignored them. I tried to ask Polly about this question this morning, my middle son. And I was like, Polly, what do I do to encourage you to get along with your brother and sister? He said, well, I get along with Sarah. And it spoke to, well, he gets along with one of them. Does he have to get along with both of them? And that kind of reminded me of a phase. There are phases where they get along.
Please.
Where they don't get along. So I think there'll be a phase. And it also reminded me that I talked to the kids you guys have each other. You are natural born friends that aren't always going to like what you do, but you always have each other, and you will always have each other's back. When mom and dad aren't here, when you're in the schoolyard, when you're somewhere else, you have a bond that God gave you for a reason. So please treasure that. So we try to remind them of that also. And sometimes that helps them at least stop being inappropriate temporarily.
That's great. Anything else you guys want to add?
I'll just add real quick. They were great suggestions. With my boys being a little bit older, it's still a definite struggle. But a lot of times what we'll try to do is if one is going through something like a harder time, at night I'll try to pray with the other child and just be like, hey, can we really pray for Michael? He's got this going on at school, without revealing everything, but just kind of growing that compassion for each other, and that sometimes helps.
Yeah, awesome. Good. Okay, this is a going back to work question. So how did you know if you should go back to work or not when your kids got into full day schooling? Or even after having a baby, right?
Well, I can start. I kind of actually have the reverse in a way. I've always worked full-time. I'm a family practice doctor. So I was working full-time with my first two, and then when I had my third,
I know, it's freezing up here. It is freezing.
I was really wishing that I had more time at home. And a friend of mine, Nancy Herhai, started praying for me that an opportunity would come about, that it would become clear as to how to find better balance of time at work and time at home. And I think that prayer and then patience and being on the lookout for those opportunities to change, and being maybe willing to kind of also take a leap of faith, like going into a new endeavor outside the house or a new activity. Sometimes you might not feel sure that it's the right thing. And I think maybe the other part of it I might speak to is sometimes these decisions feel so big and heavy, but you know what, you can go ahead and make that decision to start a new job or work, and if it doesn't work out, you know, God's going to reveal, wait, this wasn't the right path. There's this other door to go through, and then you can change. You can make that change. So
Okay.
I think that's all I wanted to say.
All right. Good.
I think I'll add in a little. I think being graceful to moms and not judging in this area is so important. Like, I think that stay-at-home moms can often feel jealous of working moms, that work time breaks up the monotony of the all-day childcare. And I think that working moms can probably feel jealous of extra cuddle time on the couch and staying in pajamas, and that there's always something that there's give and take on your decisions, and that a lot of times our reactions and our thoughts are out of an insecurity sometimes of our own decision and in our own discontent at times. So I think as your kids age and you begin asking this question, you could just say to yourself, even, what's the best use of my time? Like, sometimes you don't have a choice, and you know, maybe economics are such that it's not really a choice for you. But if it is a choice, I think you could say, what's the best use of my time? And like, how can you fill your soul and serve your family and just take on the things that God's called you to in your own life? And like, for me, in the little tiny years of 3 kids at home, for me, that thing that just allowed a different part of my soul to flourish was being a part of MOPS and to coordinate MOPS for several years. And that was just so filling to my soul to do that. And so it wasn't even a paid job, is it, Nancy Pledger? And it's not paid, but yet it filled my soul so much, and I am so grateful for those years that I did that. And then for me, I would just say in this journey, I ended up sort of by accident starting a photography business, and that was a little bit when I still had everyone at home. And so now for me, as that has grown, my kids have grown, and it just kind of worked out. But that's so I just can work on my own schedule, and I can say no when life and football games don't allow for it and different stuff, and then I can say yes when it works, and I appreciate that flexibility. So I'm pleased that I have had the opportunity to do those things and to take on this little bit of a job, but I also feel as though this role as mom and this call as mom and running a household is beyond one full-time job. And so even when kids are in school, I could still not work, do anything outside of the home, and still be running like crazy all day just to keep that household afloat and to do that job well. So I feel like however God has put it on your heart in how you feel called is very significant. And if there weren't a photography business for me, I think that there are so many ways that I would still feel very sure and secure in my calling, that I'm having a really big impact through being a mom and maybe, you know, serving in different ways. So.
That was good. Thank you. What is one of the biggest challenges that have come with raising your kids? Any words of wisdom to go with that challenge?
When we first looked or thought about this question, I wasn't really sure, and then it just hit me. And I think one of the biggest challenges is comparison. You know, comparing your kids to everybody else's kids, and with social media especially, it is really hard. And so you know, if that's a problem for you, it is for me, because I struggle with managing it, but then also I struggle with looking at what everybody else is doing and then being like, oh my gosh, should I be doing that? You know, and so I know that that's an area for me. The comparison is tough, so I kind of just stay away from that. So that's my one suggestion there. That's kind of helped me.
Miriam, do you want to add anything? You don't have to.
One of our, I think, struggles is activities in our schedule. I'm not sure. I mean, I'd like to try to make it relevant for you guys, but I'm just going to probably just speak to where we are, and maybe it'll stay in there for a few years down the road. So we have 3 kids, and we both work, and we want the kids to experience life and experience activities and discover their talents. So we want them to have opportunities to play baseball or do theater camp or other things. We try to approach it prayerfully, and we try to not have them necessarily involved in the same thing so that they're not competing against each other or feeling like, oh, he's better at this than me. So we try to be mindful of that. And that's challenging because sometimes it's easier to just have them on the same thing and the same schedule. One of the things lately I thought was interesting to think about and share, and for you guys to kind of be on the lookout for, is for your kids to learn that that everything doesn't revolve around them. Like their brother has a game too, or their sister has a play, and both of you as parents might not be able to be at each child's event, and that's okay. Everybody's is important, but sometimes you need to go to one event and not the other. And it helped us grow in terms of kind of utilizing our neighbors and our family in terms of carpooling and kind of being vulnerable to like ask for help from people. Could you drive Max to this game, or things like that? I think that was a good thing for us to stretch in that way, and for our kids to see, that you rely on people, you help people out, and they help you out.
That's good.
So,
I would just add to that. I heard someone say once before, you never know how selfish you are until you get married, and you never know how angry you can be until you have children. And it really struck me funny because I think it's really true. And I don't think with our older girls, they were really lovely. Like as small children and even as young ladies now, they're lovely. They're easy. I mean, they take direction and instruction, and it's great. Now, so I for a while I thought I was like this, like I kind of got this mom thing down, and then we had Judah and Piper, and I was like, oh no, I don't have this mom thing down. It's just that the kids are different. So what I have really learned that I am angrier than I thought I was, and how I compartmentalize that. I guess I've decided that is not the legacy that I want to leave my children. That I don't want them growing up and thinking I don't want to have 4 kids or 2 kids or 1 kid because it made mommy crazy. So the biggest challenge for me is just kind of understanding that they're little, and sometimes when I expect things, when I have unrealistic expectations, it's a premeditated resentment. They're 4, and she will cut her hair because she's 4, and I'm just going to have to get over that. And he will be mean because he's 6 and he's selfish right now. So there's lots of things. My daughter lost her Christmas hat twice, and it's not even been a month since she got it. And the drama over that is like I sawed off her arm or something. It's unbelievable. And instead of being angry over things, I'm trying to just remember that it's not the legacy that I want to leave them. So that's...
No, I love that.
Yeah.
That's good. I love that.
I would just add on that my biggest challenge is definitely the sibling issues, and the physical nature of hurting each other is my absolute biggest challenge. When I had one baby, I totally knew what I was doing in this parenting thing. And I was like, okay, child development background, all this stuff. I know what to do with this baby. And then I had a couple other babies, and now I know less now than when I started. And I say this parenting thing is the most humbling thing I have ever done in my life. And I struggle. I mean, it is hard work. And even just, yesterday, I was just like, at the end. I was just like, I don't even know what to do. And so I'm very humbled by it. And I remember hearing a talk one time at MOPS years and years ago. This lovely, wise woman said, be thankful for everything in your life because it makes you more into the person that God meant you to be. And I try to cling on to that. And I think, well, do I want to be a more humble person? Yeah. So, it's hard to be grateful for that, but I'm very thankful for the kids that I have. But they are definitely refining me through a fire, and it's not a pleasant feeling. And but yet there's nothing I would change about my life, but it doesn't mean it's not hard. And so I definitely feel as though I'm being very humbled by it, and I struggle.
Okay, that's good. Doing okay in time? Yeah, I can't see. Okay, one more. I can't see the clock at all. How do you make time for things that you're passionate about outside of being a mom and a wife?
Okay. So, no, you're fine, you're fine. So I had this dream for a long time to combine faith and fitness. And so that required me to become a fitness instructor. But I didn't have any background in being a fitness instructor. So I had shared this dream with some other friends, and then the opportunity came up for me to do this last year. But when I looked at what I needed to do, it was like 9 weeks long, and then I had to spend a week in Arizona. And the first thing I thought of was, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? I've got 3 kids. They're in 3 different schools, elementary, middle, high school. Like, I struggle every night to put dinner on the table. Like, I can't do this. And I was like, but it was something that I really wanted to do. So I prayed about it, and oddly got some strong support from my husband. So I was like, oh gosh, this must be a sign to do this. But again, I still thought my children were going to suffer. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to volunteer at school. I'm not going to be able to spend time with them because I'm going to be doing something that I want to do, but it's going to take extra time. And what I found was that you just kind of have to be faithful and show up and do a little bit each day. To be honest, when I got the syllabus, I wanted to ship everybody away for 9 weeks and then pick them up the week after I got back from Arizona. I was like, that's a plan, like that'll work, but obviously that's not an option. But the one thing that I want to encourage you about is what I never considered is what they can learn from watching you follow your dreams. So, for example, I would say, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I can't believe I have to read this chapter tonight. And my boys would say to me, oh mom, come on, you can do it. Like, this is important, this is something you wanted to do. Like, I gave them an opportunity to kind of flip roles. And then when it finally happened and I was done, they were like, wow, we can't believe that you had a goal and you finished it. So for them, like, I could never really teach them those things by just, volunteering at school or reading them an extra book at night. They got a little bit out of something from watching me go through that. Not to mention that practically they also learned some lessons. They learned to do their own laundry. They learned how to get each other on the bus in the morning on the days that I wasn't there. So that was good too. But I think it starts from coming here. Your kids are learning that it's important for you to be with other women. It's important for you to be fed by other women and their daily experiences. They know that they're going someplace else while you're having fellowship with other people. So whether it's coming to MOPS or getting involved in the Starting Point Bible study, you're doing something for yourself, and it's starting small. The last thing I want to say is I remember about, I guess it was maybe 5 years ago, you were coming around to the tables, Jessica, and she was like, does anybody want to learn how to take pictures? I'm really interested in photography. And I think it started by you bringing a group of women together here with the same interests. So much can start from just stepping out and coming here. Mm-hmm. You give up your laundry and your errands for the day and everything else that you have to do, but once a month coming here is huge.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, I think just to tuck it in where you can, and that, so there were 3 of us that got together to do some stuff with photography, and 2 of us have become photographers, and 1 was too busy and wrote a novel. So it's amazing when you just tuck it in what can happen. The other thing I would say is try to help your kids love what you love. If you share your passions with them, they may very well pick them up on their own. I loved going to Longwood, therefore you are coming to Longwood with me. And I'd say, don't worry, if you ever want an internship there, you just send those pictures I took of you when you were teeny tiny and you'll get it. I wanted them to love what I loved, and even love what we feel passionate about as a family. We love International Justice Mission. How can we help them to love that too and to bring them in on it? And if you can't tuck it in, downright schedule it. I thought, for me, something I felt passionate about and got the opportunity through the IF gathering, was to go to Rwanda, and that just got scheduled, and we were going to make it happen. And so I think you can tuck it in, you can teach them, and then you can just schedule it. Are my 3 thoughts.
Okay. Anything else before we close up? You guys were good? Okay. Thanks so much, ladies, for being up here this morning. We love your